morning. He's a commercial real estate agent, estate associate with Marcus and Millertown, part-time news junkie, and purveyor of presidential autobiographies. Book speech number 2 in the advanced manual. The purpose of his speech is to inform. It's going to be an 8 to 10 minute speech. Please help me welcome Mr. Ben Nelson.
What's the title? What's the title of?
Respect.
Respect.
Is it a lost art?
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, and good morning, fellow Toastmasters. Well, just a few months ago, I was in the gym locker room in the early morning hours, and I overheard 2 people just on the other side that were talking about how people can be just complete idiots. They're just complete idiots, and one of them finally blurted out. He said, you know what, my wife and I have come to the conclusion that, you know, everyone else is completely messed up. We're the normal ones. So I'm kind of overhearing this, and I personally took it as pretty jocular at the time. I thought, okay, there's nothing really there. It seemed pretty lighthearted. It seemed harmless. But he said, well, you know, everyone else is just idiots, really. But then I got to thinking about it later. I'm like, well, was there something a little bit more to the comment? Did it have a deeper meaning? Well, Proverbs 31 verse 26 says, she opens her mouth with wisdom, and on her tongue is the law of kindness. So when you reconcile that with a proverb, it all of a sudden does take on, in my mind, a different meaning, frankly. You know, as Toastmasters, we have a different mission, I think, out there really than anyone else. And it's, I guess you could say, citizens of the free world and not just Toastmasters. But as Toastmasters in particular, you look at the club mission of Toastmasters International, it says this, quote, we provide a supportive and positive learning experience in which members are empowered to develop communication and leadership skills, resulting in greater self-confidence and personal growth through integrity, respect, service, and excellence. That's what it says in the club mission statement of Toastmasters International. You'll find out on the website. Thought that was interesting. So I'd like to hone in on that one word today. Respect. Because I think it's a lost art. It's becoming a lost art, unfortunately, in our modern world. Our words and our actions do say a lot about us, don't they? They really do, when you get right down to it. The world has a tendency to lift people up just so that they can subsequently tear them down. We see it played out all the time in everyday life with our neighbors, maybe some of my neighbors, with our coworkers at times, the people on the streets, road rage. We see it in the grocery line. We see it played out all the time. And as Toastmasters, we do have, I think, an entirely different standard that's expected of us. We really do. Not speaking evil about one another, and I know this example I gave you was probably just that. It was just kind of lighthearted, really. But at the end of the day, I think there are a lot of people that really do throw people under the bus routinely and speak bad about others, while to their face they're one thing, but they have different mindset behind the scene. While he was still a governor of Texas, President George W. Bush, he was actually the governor of Texas, he began getting frustrated with all of the verbal attacks against him running for president. And he finally called upon a minister to give him some advice on how to handle some of this verbal attacks. The minister said, I want you to treat everybody that you meet. You treat your friends, you treat your coworkers, you treat your family, you treat everyone that you meet like they're going to be dead at midnight. You give that person all of the love and respect and whatever. You give that person everything that is in you without any thought of reward. And I promise you, son, your life will never be the same. And he thought about that. I think that must have resonated because as president, he did just that. There's a book that's called Decision Points, George W. Bush. It's an excellent, excellent read. Whatever side of politics you side on, you can't help but understand that this guy is an amazing man in terms of how he treated others. He said, in October of 1997, I visited the Jester II prison, this is while he was still governor, in Sugar Land, Texas, where several dozen inmates had enrolled in interchange. At the end of the tour, a group of men in white jumpsuits filed into the courtyard. They formed a semicircle and struck up Amazing Grace. After a few stanzas, I joined the chorus. The sitting governor just, felt compelled to just join right into the chorus. The next morning, Karen Hughes brought me the Houston Chronicle. There I was on the front page, shoulder to shoulder with the men in the prison choir. The story noted that the man next to me was George Mason. He pled guilty to killing a woman 12 years earlier. Well, that day in the prison yard, he didn't seem like much of a murderer. He had a gentle manner and a kind smile. There's no question that he had become a spirit-filled man. We fast forward to his time as president. I think it's interesting because as president, he had plenty to occupy his time. And it's chronicled in the book how many experiences he had as president where he had plenty to deal with. The war in Iraq, WMDs, 9/11, the war on terror, Osama bin Laden, you name it. But he figured out a way to dip down across the country in a profound way, I think, to reach out to faith-based groups. It was one of his key missions, and bring others up and support groups, from alcoholics to murderers and people that were in prison and later changed their life. He says, as president, my most extraordinary meeting of faith-based initiatives took place right across the hall from the Oval Office. In June of 2003, I had convened a roundtable discussion with faith-based leaders. Chuck Colson, several members of Interchange attended. When I stepped into the Roosevelt room, I spotted a familiar-looking African-American man. Walked over to him, gave him a great big hug. I'm sure glad you're here, I said. And that was George Mason, the man from the prison choir in Sugar Land. Upon release, he had earned a job as a janitor for a church. He also led a Bible study group and served as a mentor for others in the prison. What a testimony to the redemptive power of Christ. George Mason and George W. Bush together in the West Wing. Kind of chokes you up a little bit just because of his amazing ability, I think, to dip down and to reach out to people that were, for all intents and purposes, really below him as a sitting president. He really never thought of anyone lesser than him. I just think it's kind of extraordinary. The longer I live, the more convinced I am of my responsibility to reach down to others and to, I think, really help lift others up. I think that's a responsibility of not just Toastmasters, just being decent people in a world that's kind of spinning out of control, if you will. To have respect for others. I don't know how many of you saw the Grammys last February the 14th on Sunday. I did last February. And many of us, I think, saw the absolute worst example of disrespect when Beck, he's a 16-time Grammy winner, and he won the Album of the Year award for his amazing song, The Heart is a Dream. It's just an amazing, incredible song. So he's on his way up to receive his award when he beat out Beyonce, actually, for the award. And then Kanye West actually stormed up to the stage to try to to really diss him. and later at the after party said some really disrespectful things, and really was quoted, said, "Beck needs to have respect. Beck needs to have respect." That's not the first time Kanye West was noted for just being, just kind of disrespectful. Thank you. He had offended Taylor Swift in the same unceremonious way, I think, back in 2009. Just really ridiculous. But, it's not hard to see that we see those kinds of things play out in everyday life. And it's just, when you see it, it's just, amazing. But respect really is becoming a lost art. And I think there's people out there that are just more than happy to just let it out and let their feelings and emotions run rampant. Well, Napoleon Hill, author of Think and Grow Rich, said this. He said, "Think twice before you speak, because your words and your influence will plant the seed of either success or failure in the mind of others. People do judge us by the words we use and what we say." And so say what you want about George W. Bush, but I think we would all do well to follow his incredible example. Fellow Toastmasters.
Thank you, Ben.